United States. New Year's that you can't rely on the United States, and so you need. I mean, that's part of the sort of attempt to kind of reach a new relationship with Russia, which you could say had been a total failure. But nevertheless, that doesn't mean it wasn't a good idea to try. I think what else in the short run do you do in terms of buying energy, or so you have to turn to the United States. But I don't agree with that assessment. I think the European Union has understood that it needs to take a new path.
Now, without the some might say ridiculous idea of a no-fly zone, even without that, Zelensky has said that what has happened has, in terms of the violation of Ukrainian sovereignty, means that the agreement to get rid of their nuclear weapons is also invalid. And that, of course, got a retaliation from the Russians saying nuclear war, nuclear weapons are now on high alert. They put it to high alert. There are tactical nuclear weapons that Russia has. Given that nuclear war is now mentioned, I think, on every news program in every NATO nation country about once an hour, how likely do you think a limited nuclear war may be? Mersheimer, who you mentioned earlier, said that if Russia really wants to choose Ukraine as a line in the sand about the dollar, about economics, about all the rest of it, about a new world order of new countries, the killing may resemble the US firebombing of Tokyo in the Second World War. What scale of killing can we expect?
Yeah, I don't think he's talking about nuclear weapons, though, is he? I mean, I think it's, what we see...
conventional, thankfully.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, everything is bad here, obviously.
No, absolutely. I think he's making analogies to what Putin has been willing to do before, in Chechnya or wherever. Well, it's sort of odd, because I don't think Putin thinks the Chechnyans are Russians, but somehow he thinks the Ukrainians are.
Well, the Chechen war was settled quite a while ago, which is why Chechen special forces are fighting alongside Russians.
Absolutely. He managed to put a puppet regime in place, a very kind of brutal autocratic puppet regime in place, who was in Ukraine. I think the Russian is right, about how terrible it could get. But,
Pardon me?
About nuclear war, I'm not an expert on that. He's much more of an expert on that.
I have no idea.
I think during the Cold War, at least, they managed to avoid an oxymoron, the notion of a limited nuclear war. That seems unlikely to me. Like, so far, they're stopping short of things which they think would move to that. But I'm not an expert on that.
Professor James Robinson, thank you. And that's it for the show. We'll be back on Saturday, 31 years to the day since OPEC announced a cut in oil production of 1 million barrels a day to support world oil prices. Until then, keep in touch via all our social media, and if it's available in your country, and let us know if you think Europe will cut off its Russian oil supply. And remember, all episodes of Going Underground are available to watch at RTee.com.
welcome to Crosstalk, where all things are considered.
Have you seen a recycling?
The West's liberal world orders collapsed in the hegemony it sought to maintain and expand. The conflict in Ukraine is a proxy war. The real target is Russia and indirectly China. The law of unintended consequences is in play. In the end, it will be Europe that pays the highest price. Talking the liberal order, I'm joined by my guest Patrick Lawrence in Norfolk. He is a foreign affairs commentator whose columns appear in Consortium News and other publications. In Washington, we have he is a blogger and columnist. And in Paris, we cross to John Laughlin. He is a university lecturer in history and political philosophy. All right, gentlemen, crosstalk rules in effect. That means you can jump in anytime you want, and I always appreciate. John, let me go to you first in Paris. I'm titling this program "Liberal Order Collapse," or "Liberal Order Hits a Brick Wall." We're in a situation right now due to the machinations and intentional policy decisions made primarily in London and Washington. They've hit a brick wall, and their publics are going to pay a very high price for it. We don't get usually these foreign policy decisions. They happen somewhere far away, and the implications are only for the people that are on the losing end of it. Now we have energy prices, migration, other issues, security related, are all piling up on top of each other. And the publics in the West are going to feel it immediately. Go ahead, John.
I think that's right. I noted that on the 8th of March, shortly before we recorded this program, the Chinese foreign minister said that the friendship between Russia and China was as solid as a rock. And that's definitely a sign that the main strategic goal of this operation and everything else that goes with it has been achieved. That strategic goal was indeed to put an end to the unipolar world order, the famous program laid out by Vladimir Putin in Munich in 2007. However, yes, I agree with the other part of your question about the extreme dangers which Europe faces and the world generally, to a lesser extent America, in terms of, as you say, higher energy prices. But not just that, there is a whole range of financial and economic exposure of an absolutely terrifying magnitude, including the exposure of European banks to all kinds of futures contracts, for instance, for gas, for petrol, for wheat, for, you name it. All those, there's massive exposure on that. There is, of course, the exposure on energy. There are various other things like aircraft and aircraft pieces. So there is immense danger, yes, to the European economy, and I definitely don't think that Europeans are ready for this. You said in your introduction the Russians are fatalistic. The Europeans are definitely not. But on the other hand, I would guard against any, it's not over yet.
Yep.
You say the liberal world order is finished. We are in a battle right now. We are in a war, an economic war being waged by the West against Russia, and a military war being waged in Ukraine by Russia. And that's a very asymmetrical conflict. It is possible that the West will not come out on top, but I think it's much too early to say. We are a long way from the end of this yet. So
I agree.
I would not agree that the liberal world order has come to an end yet.
Okay, Nabosh, let me go to you in Washington. One of the things I find very disturbing is that all I hear from the West is escalation, escalating the conflict in Ukraine. And no one in the West is talking about a peace settlement, how to end hostilities there. They want to continue. I mean, Ukraine is already a failed state. What else are they going to do to it? I've said for years, when it came to Afghanistan, Iraq, now it's Ukraine. Haven't they had enough of Western help? Go ahead in Washington.
Well, that's the thing. They don't really, for all of the Western politicians talking about helping Ukrainians, they don't really care what happens to the Ukrainians. They're openly discussing using Ukraine as dreaming of making Ukraine another Afghanistan for Russia, which would be absolute disaster for people actually living there. So for all of their ostensible proclamations of wanting well to the people of Ukraine and wanting to save their lives and so forth, everything they're doing is actually helping those lives end very quickly or in great pain. I mean, if, if there was any interest in wanting peace and prosperity in Ukraine, they would have backed some sort of settlement with Russia years ago, and they would have given those security guarantees that Moscow asked for. But no, the plan was always to use Ukraine as a weapon.
That's why agreeing with you. I mean, there was Minsk 1 and 2, but nobody. And I really fault the Europeans a lot for that. I fault Macron, the person I call Sergeant Schultz in Germany. I fault them for not standing up for Europe. Yeah, I said it, Sergeant Schultz. Okay, Patrick, go. Let me go to Patrick for get everybody in here. Patrick, I mean, you're in the U.S. I mean, when I watch cable news, all I get is emotion. I get no rational reasoning. It's really emotional. It's hysterical. You can't make policy decisions based on hysteria. Patrick,
it's becoming intolerable as anyone among your viewers who doesn't live here needs to know. I want to edit you a little bit, Peter. We're not talking about a liberal world order. We're talking about an illiberal world order.
Okay, good.
And that has been behind the veil, in my view, all along. It seems to me that my larger point here is that this is a moment of historical magnitude that we all need to understand as such, not to diminish the importance of the Ukraine crisis and the Russian decision to intervene, which I think is regrettable but necessary. Those are my terms for it. That is a subset of a much, much larger question. President Putin and President Xi made this very clear on February 4th. This is a moment when a new world order, a tired old phrase, but it's going to have meaning this time, is beginning to come into being. I agree with our colleague in Paris. It's not over. But I think we're looking at the beginning of the end, and these sort of movements in history, they can come with imagination and creativity, or they can come violently. Typically it's the latter when an empire is defending itself, and that's what we're getting here, I think.
You can just put some pants on
I think we just all need
go
to
over
accept
that downtown and
if we're going to get through this and find our way to a stabler and more peaceful world, the Americans are not going to let it happen
Well, I mean, again, John, it seems to me, I mean, watching the quote-unquote intensive negotiations and diplomacy and all this, I was exasperated for months because it was all fake. I mean, go to the Kremlin, talk to this person, all that, and they always went empty-handed. And I have a feeling they wanted something like this to happen, okay? It justified all of their fever dream hatred, okay? Go ahead, Patrick, jump in real quick.
The other morning I read the Pentagon has not been in touch with anyone in the Russian defense establishment since the Russian intervention began. The Biden administration has no plans for diplomatic contact with the Russian Federation or anybody else.
Well, I mean, Patrick, they did send Kamala Harris. I'm not really sure what to take away from that. Okay.
Are you trying to depress me?
Okay, none of it. We can't get any more depressed than we are, gentlemen. Here, John, you got most of my question there. Go ahead and jump in.
Yeah, I think it's true what Patrick says, what Nebojsa says, which is that, of course, the Americans are dreaming of another Afghanistan. As we know, generals are always fighting the last war. But I'm not sure that I agree that there was a deliberate desire to have a war now on the part of the West. On the contrary, I think my view is that Russia had taken the decision. I obviously don't know exactly when, but we were bombarded, as you know, with leaks saying that Russia was about to invade. And I actually think that those leaks, for once, were right. I didn't believe them, and I got it wrong. I called it wrongly. I didn't expect there to be an invasion, but I think that they were right. And I think one of the proofs of that is the date. because the beginning of the military operation was day for day, as I'm sure you know, Peter, the anniversary of the Maidan coup.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I don't think that an invasion, an operation of this kind, is decided at the last minute, not even in the last month. I think, on the contrary, it was a long time in the planning. And I think, therefore, to say that the West wanted it, no, that would imply that Putin walked into a trap. I think instead, the immediate cause, apart, of course, from the Maidan and so on, are the defence agreements, the strategic agreements signed between Ukraine and Britain on the one hand and the United States on the other in July and August 2021. Agreements, strategic military agreements, which provided for huge amounts, hundreds of millions of dollars of aid to the Ukrainian Navy in particular, but to the armed forces in general, and of course military exercises and so on. In other words, throughout the summer of 2021, Ukraine was in the process, as it were, of joining NATO through the back door. Not joining NATO, of course, but establishing military and strategic partnerships with Britain and America. And I think at that point, Russia probably decided that it was game over. And it was indeed shortly after then, in November, if I remember correctly, that Russia decided to break off diplomatic relations with NATO. And I think that was probably the point at which the invasion was decided.
Yeah, but John, I mean, we saw indications, Russia said, that they would respond with military technical means, okay? I mean, they said that openly, publicly. So, I mean, was this a game of chicken, okay? Because, as I'm always reminded, living in this country, Russians don't bluff, they act.
No, I agree, but that's what I think. I think the conditions, the level of the conditions is so high, or was so high, and is still so high, that the Russians were completely prepared to invade. And you say they were not bluffing. They were not taken seriously, but that doesn't mean that the West was trying to trap them.
Okay, all right. Hang on, John. We have to go to a hard break, and after that hard break, gentlemen, we'll continue our discussion on the liberal order. Stay with RTee. Они сюда пришли, до сих пор тут стоят. Они пришли, меня же убивали.
Антитерористична операція не може і не буде тривати 2-3 місяці.
Говорят, что здесь одни террористы. Какие террористы? Вот мы террористы стоим.
Вижу украинцы, такие лощеные. Я говорю, ребята, кто это разбил наш город? Он говорит, это Путин. А при чем, говорю, Путин? Ведь Украина вошла в дебатство. Какой Путин при чем?
Банды, можно сказать, незаконные вооруженные формирования, которые придали вид легитимности.
Зачистка, да?
Жизни нету. Дети в подвалах сидят.
Ложилась на руки. Божечка.
Is your media a reflection of reality? In a world transformed, what will make you feel safer? Isolation or community? Are you going the right way, or are you being led somewhere? Which direction? What is truth? what is fake. In a world corrupted, you need to descend. So join us in the depths, or remain in the shadows.